Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicole Leinbach Reyhle, and today we are going to be discussing the evolving customer, connecting today's customers with store associates, presented by Salesfloor. Salesfloor is a mobile platform designed for store associates to serve customers online and in-store in a seamless way. They have over 10,000 associates on the platform with leading retailers that include Sachs, Bloomingdale's, Toys R Us, and Kiehl's. They specialize in clienteling and digital shopping apps to connect online customers with store associates. Joining me today will be Oscar Sachs and myself, Nicole Leinbach Reyhle. I am the publisher of Retail Minded, as well as an author of the book Retail 101, a contributor to Entrepreneur, Forbes, and various other publications as well. Oscar?
Thanks, Nicole. It's a pleasure to do this webinar with you. I'm the CEO of Salesfloor. I started my career in retail, working in stores and store operations for the first 10 years of my career, and ever since been working with companies that have been disrupting retail. As you know, there's been so many changes in the retail landscape, and Salesforce is just very motivated to try and make a difference for store associates. And our mission for the last 4 years has been to create these omni-channel associates and elevate the role of a salesperson and the opportunities that they have. So really happy to share with you guys the results of our latest survey.
Yeah, it's a great survey, and I'm excited for that as well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So sales associates, as many of you listening today know, have an incredible opportunity to maximize both shopper experiences and drive sales to their stores. Yet the human touch alone cannot meet the expectations of many of today's consumers. Incorporating technology and tools to help engage shoppers beyond the sales floor, however, can help strengthen these experiences. In fact, in a recent study from Salesfloor, it was revealed that 2 out of 3 shoppers prefer to hear from their local store associate directly over the national retailer. Additionally, the same study identified that 84% of shoppers indicated email and text messaging were their preferred method of communication with store associates, proving the path to purchase isn't what it used to be, while also reinforcing how important connecting sales associates and customers are both in store and digitally. Looking at the points I just mentioned, there's a few key findings revealed in the study from Salesfloor, which surveyed 1,000 U.S. consumers on their online and in-store retail shopping habits. Respondents ranged from age 18 to 65 and were split evenly among males and females. The study asked questions across a variety of topics, including the impact of sales associates on the shopping experience. Findings were evaluated based on the demographic qualifiers, and response percentages were further evaluated on a quantitative scale. Oscar, can you expand more on this?
Sure. So the main 3 topics we're going to cover during this webinar are coming from the findings from our study. The first is how are customers today preferring to communicate with their store associates? What interactions are they looking for? Second is what should those associates be communicating? So one is the how and the other is the what. And last but not least, how can retailers create connections between customers and the store associates that go beyond the store? A lot of this is a reflection of what we've seen with our retailers, and I think the study was, very powerful in terms of confirming the changing needs of customers today. So maybe I'll just start with the first one, which was how do customers want to communicate? As you'll see, 9 out of 10 customers are saying that when they're in a store, they're interacting with a retail store associate, which makes sense. It's been the experience, since the beginning of stores. What's interesting is that when the customer's online, only 4 out of 10 of them are interacting with an associate. And so that shows you really where the gap for retailers are today. Basically, their biggest competitive advantage, which is their people and the service experience, is being eliminated for the online customer, which is the fastest growing part of their business. So retailers really need to figure out how to bridge that gap. Otherwise, they're going to be losing or continuing to lose out to market share like companies like Amazon because they're not leveraging their biggest asset, which is their people.
So I'm curious, Oscar, it says that today 4 out of 10 shoppers are interacting with associates today. What is that interaction?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, there's softwares like Salesfloor that are starting to bridge the gap between the two. But what they've been doing probably for the last couple of years is they're actually using their own personal tools and accounts. So for example, an associate would be using their own personal email address, like a Gmail. They use their own text. They're posting on their own Instagram account. And so as the shopper evolved, they actually evolved quicker than the technology is being available in the store. And the way the associates have adapted to that is they're using, the tools that they use in everyday life, which is their own email, text, and social accounts. The problem with that is there's really no branding, no professional branding. There's no accountability or reporting on, what's being sent out by these associates. All the contacts of the customers, which traditionally needs to be in a retailer CRM, is in the personal devices or accounts of these associates, which that's definitely not good. So it's really important that retailers seize on the changes with the customer and provide the associates with tools from corporate, not from their own personal Gmail account. So it's a much more professional experience, controlled, and the retailer's not losing all these great contacts that the associates make on a daily basis. The other thing, that they might do with their own email is they take a screenshot of a website, add it to their camera roll, and then they attach it to an email. And that's just a horrible experience for the customer. You can't click on that. You can't find it online. And even if the customer bought, the associate doesn't even get credit for that sale. They don't make their commission, or the store doesn't get credit for the sale. So all of those key touch points are broken when they use their own personal accounts.
Some great points there. Thank you.
So again, in terms of how they prefer to communicate, so 84% of them are saying that email and text is their preferred communication, and that they're okay with engaging with stores at any time. And when you just think about it, like someone at work at their desk, they could send a message. If they were able to send a message to a store associate, and by the time that they got home, they had a nice answer taking care of their needs, that's a really good experience for them as well. So they're showing that they need flexibility and they want to be able to use the tools they use every day to communicate with stores as well. And more specifically, this is the breakdown of the different communication channels that made it to the top. So email was number one. Something to note is live chat is kind of like the new entrance in the game. Live chat probably a few years ago wouldn't have even made it on this chart, but the customers are choosing to not just engage with a call center when they're online. Why not engage directly with a real store associate in your local market, which you're probably going to go visit in the next week or so when you want to look at, touch and feel the product or get some help. So live chat is something that's relatively new, and I think will eventually replace the need for customers to call a call center unless it's really, for support or tracking. They should be getting served by, the people in their local stores who are probably better suited to help them, and more importantly, to develop, deeper relationships with them. The other thing that's interesting to note here is I don't think a few years ago you would have seen the messaging platforms like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and WeChat. They are in the commerce game now. This is all, everything around conversational commerce. And I think, you're likely to see those things grow. And then the last thing I'd say about this slide is just that one thing that was obvious is that each customer has their own preference. And any salesperson will tell you the key to reaching and engaging their customer is knowing the best way to reach them. Some people will not answer an email, but can answer you right away by text. One conclusion is phone is dead. It never really was a good way, to be honest, to reach stores. We've all had, experiences of trying to reach a store associate and waiting in some phone system. So that's definitely, was never effective and is dead. All the newest forms of communication are digital. And the key now is for retailers and the salespeople to know what is the preference of each specific customer, because they will be more likely to engage and answer if you are reaching them on their preferred method of communication.
Yeah, I love that. That's a fantastic point. And this is a great snapshot from today. I'm curious, though, what do you predict the trend will be moving forward?
Well, yeah, this is one of the coolest things, actually, is email, while it's showing it's 55%, the truth is SMS is growing at a much faster pace. So is the messaging apps. So I wouldn't be surprised that within, a year to a year and a half, you probably will see messaging and live chat account for more than the email. And so you're right, this is a snapshot, but the trend that we're going on is definitely going to surpass email. And that's a pretty dramatic, considering that probably a few years ago, that didn't exist from a commerce perspective. The other thing I would say that you might see, I think you're going to see that's going to happen over the next year or so, is as more and more of the communication is digital, like messaging, you're going to see bots are going to play a certain role in that as well. It'll never replace the live communication between a real person and the customer. But what it could do is help facilitate, the initial part, which is just maybe capturing some of the customer's needs, getting some information so that when the associate is ready to come on, they'll have contextual information to help that customer right away. So those are the two things I see happening over the next year or so.
Very interesting. There's a lot to be looking forward to as retailers, that's for sure.
Okay, and now in terms of the how, we're talking about what are the channels, but part of it is what are the tools that they actually need to do this. So first and foremost, obviously you need a mobile device and a tablet or a tablet. But I think a really interesting trend is, while mobile devices are a big expense and not all retailers have done it, more and more have rolled them out in stores. I would say, just roughly, at least half of them have hardware in the stores. But what we do see as a growing trend is what they call BYOD, bring your own device. Retailers over the last 12 months have been much more willing to allow the associates to use their own personal device to access software from corporate in order to run the business. Especially with Wi-Fi in the stores, it's very easy for them to do that. And I think, associates like that, because nobody really likes to walk around with a big tablet or have two phones on them, because everyone has their own personal phone on them all the time anyways. So, hardware is definitely something that you need to get that done, and it needs to be mobile versus the desktop or POS. Second, you need branded communications. So, you can't have associates sending stuff through email, uncontrolled, unmonitored. It needs to be professional. The same way the brand is so important, store design and marketing, etc. That needs to be reflected in the associate communications. And having it personalized too is very important, whether it's featuring the associate's picture and having different ways for the customer to interact with that associate. That's important. And lastly, and I think probably the most important, is give the associate back the opportunity to attach any product that the retailer sells to these communications. Again, professional products, the same way you would see them on the .com, and just as important is the ability to click on them and land on the retailer's product page and buy right there on the spot. That makes it very seamless for the customer to get recommended products. And it's also super important for the associate who now, instead of just selling product in their store, they can sell anything available on their .com, which is a much greater assortment. So they feel they have a lot more to sell, and they're not limited to doing that just when a customer's in the store. They can be reaching out to customers while they're the associates in the store, but the customer is able to buy 24/7 because any of these products click back to the website, and when they are purchased, the associate gets credit. So you've just increased the opportunity now for an associate to sell anywhere, basically the country, as well as at any time. And I think those are the things that are engaging associates very much, is giving them this new opportunity to drive more business and earn income. Third is the tracking and attribution, which is kind of what I just alluded to, which is if you're going to ask your associates to serve customers online as they do in store, you have to pay them for those sales the same way you pay them in store. And every retailer has different incentive program, but especially in a commission workforce, they need to be able to treat that sale the same way as it was in store. That's the incentive for the associate to actually want to be able to do this. And even if it's a non-commission environment, the store needs to get credit for that sale. That store team is trying to hit their budgets. And it's very important in an omni-channel world that regardless of what channel the customer buys on, if the associate is serving that channel, then the associate in the store needs to get credit for that. And then obviously, last but not least, you need security. This is customer information. You need to make sure that this is professionally secured in a software and not just done through any associate's personal accounts where you might have sensitive information being passed.
You've made some really incredible points here, and I'm curious, how easy is it for retailers to implement this?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of people ask me that, and I think at the beginning they worry about, is this some giant, software implementation that takes a year? Essentially, there are companies out there, Salesfloor being one of them, which have adopted essentially the SaaS platform. So a SaaS model allows the retailers to leverage all this feature that we're describing, and it's already built. And so it's actually quite easy for them to install. Most of the retailers, or I think all of the retailers, have Wi-Fi in the store. So that that's something that was preventing retailers from doing this for years. But I think we've passed that stage. Like I said, hardware, a lot of retailers have rolled that out so that associates have a mobile device, or they're just going to allow the associates to use their own device. So that's another obstacle that's been removed. And from an associate perspective, I would say, a lot of this is very intuitive. It's the same way they communicate in everyday life is how this tool was built. And it makes it very natural for the average associate, whether it's, an older associate or a younger one, but it makes it very easy for them to use, this software. Like, for example, when they're in the store and they can look at their merchandise and just with the app scan a few products and then press one button and send it to a customer. That's very similar to how they were serving customers in store. And really, they're able to grasp that quite intuitively. All right, so now let's move on to the second bucket. Now that we've explained how customers want to hear from their associates, let's make sure that we understand what the customer wants to discuss with the associate. Let's make sure that we don't turn the associates with these new capabilities into just replicating the corporate e-newsletter or spamming clients with things that they don't really have value. So part of our survey, our study focused on that, and we asked the customers what exactly they find very valuable to hear from their associates. So 2 out of 3 of the shoppers, first of all, said that they actually prefer to be contacted by their local store associate than a newsletter. And the obvious, reason for that is it's a lot more personalized and it's a lot more contextualized. But that's a clear customer need. So the challenge for the retailer is to say, if my customer wants to hear from their associates, and how do I implement this, and how do I put in place the right programs so that the associates are saying, reaching out and communicating what customers want to hear. So in our study, the customers told us that the top 5 things they want to hear about are new arrivals and sales, restock merchandise, recommendations on products, invites to any events, and explaining and helping product, around benefits and features of a product, so the customer can, know if they want to buy it or not. And what we did hear from the customer is that the number one thing that they think associates do very well in store and that they would want to see online is product recommendations. And that's all around the theme of personalization that retailers have been trying to, achieve for years. Is instead of a corporate newsletter that sends some products announcements to everybody, having one associate reach out to one customer and think about what that customer would actually want to buy and recommend something that was personalized for them, personalized for the the local community, the income level, the geography, the weather. That's a lot more relevant than just getting the corporate newsletter, which serves a different purpose, but is not about one-to-one selling. So recommended items is the number one thing. And the number one thing they felt associates were lacking to provide was information on what just hit the store and sales. And that's really a good indication that what's missing is a timely trigger for associates, that when things are changing in their store, like a new arrival or a sale, there's no way right now, or up until now, there's been no great way for the average associate to know that and then reach out one-to-one to their customers in a scalable way and notify them of that. Today, there are softwares that do that, like Salesfloor, and it's important that retailers start, teaching out to their associates that this is an important part of their role, is reaching out to customers, not just waiting for them to come in store, because more and more of these customers are researching and doing all their shopping online, and you need to engage them online and start that online conversation before they buy online or before they even come into the store. So, those are a few gaps that the study revealed, and it really shows the need for associates to reach out. So now the important thing is, how can you do that in a scalable way so that it's relevant, personalized for the customer? So one of the tools that associates are using today in order to provide those personalized recommendations is having access on the fly to customer insights. So imagine I reached out to a customer and I want to engage them. Before I do so, or before I make a product recommendation, I can go to that a customer's profile and see what category of products do they buy, what brands, what's their average order, when was the last time they purchased, and actually see their transaction history so that I get a real sense with visual images of what they've bought, so that I know what is a good thing to recommend. And then I'm able to reach out, whether by text or by an email, and offer them some very personalized recommendations. That's what's going to convert at a very high level. And more importantly for the retailer, that's what's creating a more personalized and deeper relationship between their brand and customers. And that's the number one differentiator they have with the ever-growing competition from companies like Amazon. So once you give them the software, once you give them the tools to do what they need to do, there is a more qualitative training and evolution that the associates themselves have to go through. Now, I do still see that it's very intuitive. It's what they do every day in how they communicate in everyday life. But we do think that there's a few things that come along with giving them this. So the first is making them comfortable to use tech in their day-to-day job. they're very used to a customer walking into the store and they do their thing. They need to be equally comfortable with having their role of serving the online customer, whether it's reaching out or answering requests from online customers as well. Second is what's the right way to engage? There are norms for how often you contact a customer. What kind of content do you send? What's appropriate, not appropriate? We learned very early in the social years that you don't just post buy my product. There's a very important, strategy, communication strategy when trying to develop relationships and loyalty with customers that go beyond just saying, buy this. So those things are important best practices for retailers to start training and sharing with their associates. Social media guidelines, kind of like I just mentioned, and the ability to respond to requests. So the same way a call center is trained on receiving a request from customers, so too should a store associate, because when you're able to connect the online customer to the local store, all of a sudden the store will start to get more and more customer requests coming in from the web, and same way they do in store. So they know how to respond to a customer in store, but they need to know what's the best way digitally to respond to a customer. There's certain norms and best practices there as well. So in terms of creating connections with customers, that was our third main theme of the study and of our webinar. One of the interesting statistics that show you why this is so important is that shoppers are 2 times more likely to make a purchase after they interact with a store associate. You could just look at the conversion rates between a store, which depending on the type of store ranges from 10 to 30%. And you look at the conversion rates on a .com, which is between 1 and 2%. You see that there's a massive difference in conversion. And what our customers are telling us is that one of the main reasons for that difference is the store associate and the value they bring to the customer and the purchase pathway. So a big question for retailers and a challenge is, if my associates can double the likelihood of a customer to buy, how do I create more and more connections and interactions between all those online customers who are not in store with their local store? So just to set that up in terms of what the vision is, which is really a vision for an omni-channel associate. When you think about it, everybody knows that customers are omni-channel, which means they're buying online and in store in a seamless way on the same transaction. The problem is that the associates are not omni-channel. So how do you create omni-channel associates that allow them to serve the customer online as they would in store? So when you think about the in-store experience, you walk into a store, you spend 20 minutes with an associate, you tell them what your needs are, they help identify what you're looking for, they walk with you, they show you products, they make recommendations, they explain features, and then they help you make a decision. The problem is all those customers who are undecided, which is the problem retailers have, which is showrooming, when they leave, they have no way to finish the conversation that started in store. They basically left online with nobody, and it actually, the same applies when you start online. When you're starting online and you've researched yourself hundreds of products, and you've narrowed it down to a few based on a bunch of criteria, if you walk into the store the next day because you want to touch that product, the associate there is starting from scratch. They have no clue what you were doing online before you came in. So that's a classic omni-channel disconnect that retailers are all need to address now. Kind of like the last frontier of omni-channel. And this is what we're saying the omni-channel associate looks like compared to the in-store only associate. The omni-channel associate, first of all, has an online presence where their product recommendation, their curation is online, and customers can actually shop with them and the same way they would in store, and see what that associate thinks is most relevant for their local customer base, because they know their customers and their community better than anyone. And then second, now that you're creating a way for customers to shop online with the associate, you need all kinds of different apps that allow them to communicate and collaborate and essentially shop together. So when you think about, live chat, messaging, booking an appointment, personal shopper services, anything that allows the customer to get served online by a real associate. Then you have the clienteling piece, which is really the marketing outreach, allowing associates, and not just corporate marketing, but allowing associates to reach out to their customers, engage them, and drive them into the store or to buy online. And the newest one, which is relatively new, and that's actually unique to Salesfloor, is why don't you leverage the millions of customers on your .com and connect them to their local store associate? Why are they on a .com not getting served by anyone, unless it's some call center located far away, versus directly connecting in real time that customer to their local store so that they can start developing relationship, increase conversions online, and drive traffic back into the store. So that's the vision for an omnichannel associate, and I'm just going to give you a few examples now of what are the types of connections that retailers can create between that online customer and the store. So first, when we talk about marketing outreach, the average associate doesn't know when they start their day who, out of the thousands of customers that we have, who do I reach out to, and what do I say to them? That, maybe the top 5% of the associates know and are skilled at doing that, but the majority really don't. That's something they haven't had to do. So with automated tasks generated from customer purchase history, associates actually just get on their app a bunch of tasks a day, and that's obviously the quantities control. And it says to reach out to Mary, your customer, because she bought 60 days ago, and we know it's time for her to get a recommendation on a related product. Or contact John because he hasn't purchased from us in 6 months, and we want to re-engage him, and here are the things that John likes. This is a way, if you do that across 1,000 associates, you now have a very powerful engine that is reaching out, making connections with customers, and driving relationships and sales. Another opportunity for creating connection is, as we mentioned, is store associates should have an online presence. So we call this the associate storefront, which is the ability for an associate to actually have their own online personalized version of the .com. It's basically their own storefront where they can curate their top picks, what's new in their store, and a bunch of other ways that they curate product, which is very relevant and more personalized for customers that want to shop with that associate. And it's also a place where that customer can reach out digitally, whether through live chat or a request platform, reach out and connect with the associate. There is no real way for them to do that today, except through the storefronts or calling the store, which we know is really not a good thing. And associates love this because they're able to sell the entire assortment of the retailer through the navigation of this storefront, and it makes them essentially open for business 24/7. They're no longer limited to the customer or themselves, being on a physical sales floor. And so this, again, is a great example of really, creating omnichannel associates, adapting to how customers are changing and the needs that they have to shop, and empowering the associate to do more than what their traditional role was, and making them a lot more relevant in the digital world. And then one of the last ones that I will share with you guys in terms of connections, where we've just seen amazing results on this, is what we call Salesforce Connect. It's the ability when a customer is on the retailers.com. So this is an anonymous customer, retailer has no clue, and their traffic's in the millions of visits per month. They now can interact on any page with their local store. They can actually pick any store in the country. So if they're traveling, they could still reach out to their local store. But basically, the customer is geo-targeted. They're connected to their local store. They see real associates that are working that day and available right now to service them as they're going through the .com catalog. And the customer is able to interact with them through a variety of ways, some of which are live, like live chat, and some of them are just messaging platforms. And again, the ability for me to send a message while I need some help shopping while I'm at work, and by the time I get home, a real associate in my local store gave me an answer, and I'm going to go visit that store associate the next day, and instantly we'll have a connection because we started together online. So this has been a huge traffic driver back to the stores and a huge way to connect these anonymous customers to associates who we have already proven have a huge impact on the conversion of that customer.
So that's interesting, Oscar. You're telling me that if I go on Jennifer's storefront, for example, as we saw on that slide, it can connect the associate in the store. What I'm curious about are the store and associates still getting the credit for those sales?
Absolutely. I think one of the cardinal rules is any touch point that a customer has with an associate, whether it is because they started on the .com and got connected, or whether it is they went directly to an associate's own storefront, or because they got an email and clicked on a product from them, or even, to be honest, an Instagram or a Facebook post, any of the interactions where an associate is getting a customer to click on a product and buy, that store now gets credit for that sale. So it's helping them with hitting their budgets versus getting killed by online, which is what's been happening. So the store is now more engaged in the digital world, and it gives credit or whatever incentive program the retailer has to that individual associate, whether it's productivity, reporting, or commissions.
Great. That's fantastic. I love it.
All right, so it's 1:38. I'll just conclude by saying here are the three main things to take away from our study that we have learned and that we've seen with our existing clients. The first is you need to give them the right hardware and software. There are different players out there that offer different types of software. Some do messaging, some do clienteling. I think one of the things Salesfloor has tried to do is really put everything an associate needs in one so that it's seamless and easy for the customer and the associate. Two is the associates need to be trained and given the ability and the opportunity to market directly to shoppers, whether it's through tasking, whether it's by giving them the ways like texting, messaging platforms, the product catalog, etc. All those things need to be trained out and empower your associates to reach out to customers and create those relationships. In a digital world where everyone communicates online, it's crazy that thousands of associates in a retailer are not even allowed to connect with their customers. So that's a very important step. And then the third one is creating online connections between shoppers and their local store. Whether it's to make sure you have an omni-channel experience, like I gave an example when you leave the store or before you come in, whether it's to improve conversions on the .com by bringing real people on, creating connections between brick and mortar and the online customer should be a number one priority. I know it is. All of our clients and everyone we speak to, it's a very important priority. The question is, what's the best way to do that? That's the fun part of our job is working with retailers, helping them understand all the features we bring and what are the best practices to implement this.
Great. Well, I love how you are basically explaining how you can empower store associates to serve in-store and online shoppers, increasing loyalty sales and overall enhancing that customer experience. At this time, I would love to open it up to questions. We already have them coming in. And so I'm going to go ahead and read them out, and Oscar will enlighten us with some more insight here. So the first question is, do you see trends on how certain generations like to communicate in which way?
Um, yeah, I think, one of the things that we talked about on an earlier slide is that messaging is gonna, at the pace that messaging is going, it's going to slowly surpass email. In our graph right now, email was 55%, and I believe in the 30s for text. So you're going to see more and more of the SMS and messaging platforms grow in popularity. Another important thing that they're looking for is for the associates, kind of bridging all the different sections we just talked about, for associates to reach out about product recommendations, new arrivals in the store, and sales. So I see that evolving, in that way as well.
We have another question here, which I think is a pretty great one. It says, how can retailers assess the ROI for investing in their associates for this type of solution?
Okay, that must be a retailer asking that. That's definitely a challenge for retailers today. As they want to justify investment in these tools, it's very important that they have the ROI. We've had the chance to work with quite a few data science teams with our clients. What I would say at a high level, here's how they evaluate it. First, they want to see what is the volume of sales across all channels as a result of the tools. So whether it's online, but just as important as in-store. As you could tell, a lot of this is about serving customers online. It doesn't mean that the customer has to buy online. If they choose to, after a recommendation, to go in store and touch and feel the product, that's still a benefit of the tool and the associates' impact with that customer. So retailers are looking at how much of this is driving for my online business and how much of this is driving sales for in-store. We actually have a stat from previous studies that for every $100 online that we track in sales, $68 is also attributed in-store as a result of these digital connections. So one is volume across channel. Second is obviously customer engagement. Are they using this? Are they opening emails? Are they sending in requests? Are they live chatting? Are they going to storefronts? Any statistic around customers using this, which obviously if your customers are telling you this is how they want to shop, then you need to adapt. Every retailer is always trying to prove incremental value. So whether it's for higher conversion rates, higher average sale, lower returns, these are all things that can help prove out that these are incremental sales that are coming in, not just moving from one bucket to another. And then lastly, they look at new contacts. So this has created a massive engine of new customer contacts, because essentially every time a customer wants to interact online with an associate, they're leaving either their email address, their phone number, their text, or something. And that's just been a massive value for the retailers, which is contact acquisitions.
Great, thank you for that. So another question we have here is, do associates have time to serve customers online while in store, and can the average associate do this?
Yeah, I think, about 3 years ago when we were starting to roll Salesfloor out to clients, that was a big concern. The store is busy taking care of store customers. How can we start getting them involved with online? And in the past, there used to be like this Chinese wall between the online business and the store business. That wall's come down a lot. But one way I like to answer that is, I would ask people, well, what is the role of a store associate? And they always respond saying, well, it's to serve customers. Well, in an omni-channel world, your customers are omni-channel, and they need to be served online the way they are in store. So it actually is the number one priority of the associate in store to service their customer. Whether that customer is in store or online really doesn't matter anymore. That's just the way they're shopping. First, we have to make it their priority, and we have to create the time. Second, there is less traffic to stores. That's just a statistical fact. We know that less people are going into brick and mortar. That's why people are closing stores. So there is more time for the store associates because less people are going to their store. And even before, there were always periods of downtime for store associates. And, you know, when you think of 2 p.m. or 10 a.m. in the morning, that's not where the majority of the traffic was hitting. So within a day, the associate has time to service their online requests. When it comes to, you know, storefronts, that's nothing. I mean, that's, you know, our stat is about 20 minutes every 2 weeks to kind of curate and post new product recommendations to your storefronts. So I think, you know, that's really hasn't disrupted the wage model at all. And then lastly, I would just say, you know, associates, they know how to handle multiple customers. Before, when they were busy with one customer and another one came into the store, they knew how to balance the two. And that's the same thing with an online customer. You have to know how to balance, you know, answering your customers online with serving your customers in store.
Great. We have one more question here, so this will be the last question, is are there stats around the effectiveness of associates marketing to consumers this way?
Yeah, the great thing about that is it's 100% measurable. With, you know, online, you can track everything in every way. So we saw that across the board, the open rate of our emails sent by associates to their customers is double the corporate newsletter. We saw that the click-through rate on those newsletters are 50% higher. We saw that 30% of all the online sales that are being driven through Salesfloor are coming from the marketing features. So it's definitely an important part. And what's interesting is there's actually a media value for the retailers. When you have 1,000 associates each reaching out to customers, and those customers are clicking on products and landing on the .com, well, those are clicks that the marketing department would normally have to pay for to drive traffic to their site, which is their number one responsibility. So one of our statistics is, and it varies by category, but on average, it's about $5,000 in media value in clicks to the site per associate per year. So you can imagine when you have 500 associates, you're talking about millions of dollars of free marketing that you're driving now that drives traffic back to the .com.
Great. Well, this has been a really fascinating webinar. I know I've learned a lot. I have a lot to explore still with Salesfloor, which I'm looking forward to because there's so much to offer here. So I want to thank you, Oscar, for sharing so much today with us. And to everyone that dialed in, thank you as well. You can learn more about Salesfloor by emailing sales@salesfloor.net and, of course, visiting salesfloor.net. Thank you for being here today, and we hope you have a fantastic afternoon.